Hello, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our series where we talk with counselors from each grade level. I got the idea to do this to have an episode with a 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade counselor. But then Lauren on Instagram reached out to me and said, would you ever do one with 8th grade counselors as well? Because I think this would serve middle and high school counselors who need to know about the transition for 8th graders moving into 9th grade. And I said, say less. I need you on the podcast. Thank you for volunteering yourself. You'll notice Lauren and I live in the same city in Greenville, South Carolina, and we did not know each other. In the meet and greet at an ASCA session in Atlanta last summer, we happened to introduce ourselves to each other, and we found out we were both at ASCA from Greenville, South Carolina. Our district is huge, and y'all know I'm not in a school anymore, but Lauren's middle school is across town from where I worked, so we would have never overlapped. It was funny to me that it took us both going to ASCA all the way in Atlanta to meet, but here we are. Lauren Tenholder is a middle school counselor and has been for 10 years. Her first school counseling job was in Jacksonville, Florida, and she worked there at a Title I middle school for 2 years. Then she moved to Greenville, South Carolina with her husband, and she got another middle school position where she currently works. Outside of being a middle school counselor, Lauren has worked for the American School Counselor Association as a volunteer coordinator for 2 major national conferences, and she also owns an Etsy shop as a way to take care of her mental health after school. I'll link her Etsy shop in the show notes. Y'all need to follow her in all the places because her Etsy shop is so cute. You will love all the stuff in there. Well, now that I've introduced you to Lauren, let's get into this week's episode where we get to chat about what we need to know about our rising 9th graders when they're coming from 8th grade in the middle schools with middle school counselors up into our high school setting. So without further ado, here's Lauren. You got into this profession to make a difference in your students' lives, but you're spread thin by all of the things that keep getting added to your to-do list. I can't create more hours in the day, but I can invite you into my Counselor Click where you'll finally catch your breath. Come with me as we unpack creative ideas and effective strategies that'll help you be the counselor who leaves a lifelong impact on your students. I'm Lauren Tenholder, your high school counseling hype girl, here to help you energize your school counseling program and remind you of how much you love your job. Hey, Lauren, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
When I put this out there and said, let's do this for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and you sent me a message, you were like, we should do this for 8th grade too. I said, that is a genius idea. And now you volunteered yourself to be on the podcast. So
of course, I'm volunteering for all things all the time. I can't help it.
Yes, just what you would expect. You're going to do that to yourself. You're going to volunteer for it and you're going to be on a podcast. Is this your first podcast you've ever been on?
I feel like it is, which I'm so happy my first one would be on yours.
I'm so excited. So you're an 8th grade counselor. I've already told all the listeners kind of like your bio and your background, but I think that you're going to have a lot to offer our 9th grade and older counselors, just having that middle school perspective, because especially if you are used to working with older students, you forget that they come to us even in the high school just as these like little babies. And to you, they're like the oldest, wisest, most mature they've ever been.
Absolutely. Yes. Like the end of 8th grade, I'm like, man, these kids are adults. They're rocking and rolling. Look at them go. And they're going to high school. And then I'm sure they get there, and then I'm sure that they look so little still with their braces. And
they get tinier and tinier every year.
Yeah.
Like, how did this happen? Okay, Lauren, tell us, you've been at 2 different middle schools. What were the populations of the makeup of your school? What was that like? And then what was the caseload model for where you worked and where you currently work?
Okay, so I used to work in Jacksonville, Florida, and that's where I first started counseling. And I want to say it's been a while, but I want to say my caseload, okay, so the whole school for 6 to 8 was probably 800 kids, and that was split between 2 counselors. And it was like very low socioeconomic status, Title I, everyone was free and reduced lunch. And it was just constant chaos at all points of time. And so my co-counselor and I had our own separate caseload. So I had 6th grade and half of 7th, and then she had the other half of 7th and then 8th grade. But because everything was just so crazy at all points of time. We would collaborate a lot. So we were always together and just counseled all the children. So
And you probably knew everyone at that point.
yes, exactly. Well, we had to because it was always, I have a problem with this kid or this kid. And then I go, who is that? Because they're not on my caseload. I didn't know.
Right.
So we had to work together a lot. But the school that I'm at now, again, it's a middle school, 6th to 8th. So we have 5 counselors. 3 of us loop with our kids. So we start in 6th grade with the students, and then we go to 7th with them and the 8th grade with them. So
What do the other 2 counselors do?
okay, so they do the same thing. So like I'm going to 8th grade this year, and so the 6th grade counselor last year is now going to 7th grade with his kids. And then the last year's 8th grade counselor is going to 6th grade.
Wait, I thought you said there were 5 counselors.
Right. There are. And then the other 2, one is career only.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yes, and then the other one is intervention. So she works with the kids that flag in our system that need intervening.
Okay, that's great. That's so nice to have that extra support.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. And it's really nice because we work really well together, and our school district for the middle schools is moving towards everyone looping with their students, and some of us are really excited. I love it, but some of us are having a hard time, but I could see where maybe if your department has a lot of like clashing or don't all jive, I could see where it's kind of hard. But
Because when you do either alpha or you're rolling, I feel like you have to have really extra good communication because you're
yes,
always kind of training somebody else on something, or someone is the point that everybody's doing it. It requires you to be on the same team, which I think is a good thing.
it is. It's great. And I will say that a lot of the times, like I'll have a student in my grade level. So let's say I'm 7th grade, and then there's an older sibling in 8th grade. So that like the 8th grade counselor and I would just make sure to like talk if there's anything going on, which we've had to do a lot of the time, just so then we're all on the same page. Or I talked to mom today, or this is what this was like. But like you said, it's just a lot of communication that we have to have and be able to see each other.
Yeah, and counselors are great at communication, so it's just
Yes,
in our wheelhouse, I think.
it is. It's easy.
Okay, when you came to me and you were like, these are the things that high school counselors need to know. You presented this as an idea, and I was like, yes, I'm on the edge of my seat. I need to know. What do high school counselors, you think, need to know? Kind of like the most important things when this topic comes to your mind. When they're leaving 8th grade, what do we need to be aware of as they're coming to us in high school?
I would say one of the biggest things is that as a high school counselor, remember that your feeder middle school counselors has literally just watched these children go through the most awkward time of their lives. And
Amen. We can all go back to that time like
yes,
instantly and say, yes, that was me.
yes. And, we've watched them grow, and then we're like release them at the end of 8th grade to go to high school. And we're just a really good resource to have. So working really close with your feeder middle schools, I feel like it's just super important, especially when it comes to like anything from students that have a really hard time at school to registration, which I know is like a whole beast in itself. But if things are communicated well, like we were saying before, like communicating with your department, communicating with your feeder schools is super important. So then that way, you know what you're getting with these 9th graders, and then you can hit the ground running, and then your job's easier. So it's just really good to collaborate.
Well, and I think we forget about 2 things that you just mentioned. We are so used to those seniors launching and just how like emotional and how tied you are to them. Like you've seen them grow so much. I forget that you as the 8th grade counselor would be feeling that same type of way. And like, I don't think having sympathy or like putting myself in your shoes and saying like, oh, you're probably kind of sad when they all leave you, especially if you've been looping with them, you know them so well.
Right. And I'm sure elementary counselors feel like that when they come to middle school too, because they have
Right.
them technically the longest. So
Yeah.
I feel sad at the end of 8th grade because I'm so comfortable with the kids, and I know they're so comfortable with me, but I like to feel like I'm doing everything and know all the things to have them ready for high school. So when I send them off, I feel really good about it.
Yeah.
So at my school, we have 5 feeder high schools because we're just a larger district. So I make sure to talk to all those counselors, but also we're a magnet school. So we technically feed into every high school in our school district. So it's really important for me just knowing who those counselors are and having those relationships, which I feel like our school district's doing a really good job with helping us collaborate with more of the vertical planning together with with counselors. So the middle schools and high schools come together. Same thing with the elementary and middle, but just like having conversations, whether it's just registration stuff, so we aren't giving you a mess of things you have to clean up. Because I know what that's like getting it from the elementary level. So I would hate throwing a mess to my high school friends, because we all need to be really good friends so the kids can have a good time. So just it's registration stuff to watch out for this kid, or keep an eye on this one, or don't call dad, or, just little pieces that would help them have a smooth transition to high school.
Yeah, and I just think about how easy that is to forget. I mean, I hate to say this, to like forget that you're such a good resource. Once they get into ninth grade, we're in our bubble. Like we have forgotten that there has been a counselor who knew all these things about them. Like you just said, don't call dad. He's not really going to be a great resource. And
Right.
their cousin has been living with them and they're actually the one who gets them to school every day, or what, just those little things that you've spent all that time getting to know them. We forget to reach out to the eighth grade counselor and say, like, do you know anything about this situation? I would say I would be so hesitant to do that because like part of it feels like that. I mean, it's not like gossip because you're seeking the information for the betterment of the child, but
Right.
like you wouldn't want it to come across as that. Like, give me all the things I need to know. Like, what is this kid really like? Like, I never want that impression in my brain before I meet them, but seeking out the information that would actually help them, like you said, in terms of like those
Yes.
academic trends, or should this kid have an IEP? Like, what has happened in the past?
Or what is this 504? Because you know that we all are blessed with those. So like
Right.
what is up with this 504?
And then you get the answers like, yeah, somebody just really pushed for that, or some doctor wrote a note that really, I don't know that it needed to happen or whatever. You
Mm-hmm.
get like the in between the lines kind of stuff if you reach out to
Absolutely.
that middle school counselor, I bet.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, what trends are you seeing with your eighth graders? I'm going to talk like eighth, ninth grade. Like they're leaving you, they're maturing through eighth grade. That's who I'm talking about right here. But like, what are the common struggles that you're seeing? What are they coming into your office for?
I will say I remember being in eighth grade and being so ready to go to high school. I was excited. I was ready for it, but I'll say these kids are not excited. And I don't know why. And I keep saying, high school is so much fun. You have a little bit more freedom, and there's all of these things that come with high school, and they just don't want to go. And I'm seeing again, so I don't think I touched upon the demographic I'm working with now is like a very wealthy pocket of families in our town, and then a very poor pocket of families in our town. So like when you come to my school, like you can see it driving to my school. So we get a little taste of everything, but I'll say with all of them, none of them are excited to go to high school. I think that they like just being comfortable once they get settled in middle school. But I also have been seeing a lot of anxiety about high school credit classes, and then parents really pushing them. So for
Hmm.
kids that probably don't need to be taking high school classes in middle school.
Like an algebra one, Spanish
Yeah,
one, they're like starting to get those credits early or being
yeah,
pressured to.
I can see where if a student needs that challenge, I can see that being super beneficial. But there's just some kids where parents are, talking with their friends. They go, well, if your kid is in algebra one and English one in eighth grade, they're not going to college. And then it's like sheer panic.
As you would imagine. Like
Right.
you and I are both parents, and if I wasn't familiar with how the school system works or that stuff, I would be the exact same way.
Right, exactly. Or, oh my gosh, well that parent has all these high school kids and they all go into college and they all did this. It's a lot, but with the parental anxiety, it's like bleeding into how the
Mm.
kids are feeling about their academic performance. And so all the time with especially with high school registration, we have kids handing us their scheduling cards like crying because they didn't get recommended for AP Human Geography and they got only recommended for honors, and their mom's
Which
going to
is
freak out.
a hard class for ninth graders
Yes.
anyways.
Yes, it's so hard, and I can't get over the parental pressure, which I understand from, like you said, it could be from lack of knowledge and just like not knowing. But when we have our graduation meetings with each individual eighth grader and their parents, and we're telling them it's okay if they don't take this class their freshman year, and the parents like, nope, they're going to take it. They're going to take it.
They
What do I
don't
need to
believe
do?
you.
No. And then the kids sitting there like shrinking, like shrinking.
And because they're embarrassed too.
Of
When you're in
course.
eighth grade and your parent is like getting a little aggressive, you just want to melt away. Do not want to be there anymore.
Exactly. Like I said, just like lots of tears and anxiety about going to high school and their futures. And I feel like a lot of it now too is, we see a lot of issues with social media, Snapchat, just our favorite that we see all the time. But it's almost like they were never able just to be kids. And I feel like that there's just such an expectation of them to be adults that they never were able to mess up. Like they're just never, they have to be perfect. And I think that it gives them a lot of pressure.
It would be hard to live in that.
Yes. And I'm happy that social media wasn't really a thing when I was in high school. We had like, what was it? MySpace, like that. And that was it.
Right.
But now it's all of you can just easily see all this, like the celebrity stuff and people contouring their face and like everyone looks like they're 20, but they're actually 14. So I feel like the kids have a lot of pressure to just grow up when they're not able to just enjoy being kids. And I normally say that, like, just give yourself time to enjoy being a kid because you have 4 years after this. Like, you have 4 years to be a kid and then you have to kind of grow up a little bit. So just enjoy it.
So if you could say something to the parents of 8th and ninth graders right now, as you're an expert in 8th graders at this point, what would you say to those parents? What advice would you give them, or a wake-up call or anything that you would like to tell them?
I would like to tell them to chill out, but I would say, like, stop doing everything for your kids. Like, let them make a mistake. And then if they make a mistake, like, talk it through with them. Don't just go fix it for them. Like, they have to figure out how to make the mistakes and how to fix them. You can guide them doing that. But, we have parents that sit down still in 8th grade and do their homework with their student. And I'm just, what are you going to do when they go to college?
And who has time for that?
Right. Like, go live your adult life.
Go live your adult life.
Yes.
I would always tell high school students, like, I've already done this once before. I don't need to get my diploma again. So then I can't imagine a parent. And again, I'm not in that place yet as a parent. Maybe I'll
Right.
feel that pressure, but man, I've got other things to do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I
It's,
agree.
well, you made such a good point. You want them to fail under your care and your leadership and in your
Hmm.
home where you can have a conversation about that. Allowing them to fail is a good thing.
Yeah. Like if they fail a test that that they studied for, it's okay. It's fine. I would have kids crying because I got 85s on their test and I said, it's still a B. And then they go, no, my mom's gonna be so mad. I was like, because you got a B. I think I understand to a point, but I think that it's okay to mess up because you're not going to learn otherwise. Or when you go to college, the first time you fail a test is when you go to college, and then the professor's like, okay, well, sorry.
Right. And then you
Because
have
that's
to
what they're going
figure
to
out how to
say.
work through those emotions on your own, not
Right.
there. And what does that look like? When I think of my young daughter, who I can already tell is a perfectionist, as a parent, I think I want her to have a failing experience so that she knows what that honestly feels like and that she knows that I'm not going to be disappointed in her for the rest of her life or something. Like,
Right.
it's a normal thing, and I want you to do that so you can learn and grow. And I
Yeah.
hope that at least the adults in the school building are letting students know that and giving them that safe place to
Absolutely.
fall, that is a key role of what you're doing as a counselor, that whether their parents are doing that for them or not at home, you get to do that in the school building. That's pretty special.
Yeah, for sure.
The Click Collaborative is a membership for high school counselors designed to equip, encourage, and connect counselors to their greater community. With a professional development-driven mindset, the membership hub comes loaded with 25-plus instantly accessible PD videos, completion certificates, and bonus features like templates, checklists, and counseling resources. But the best part isn't the features. It's the changes you'll see in your confidence and your counseling program. Inside, you'll find worthwhile, practical, and applicable PD that propels you to action in a community full of your people where you can grow, connect, and feel validated. Does this sound like the support you've been looking for? If so, I want to invite you to check out the Click Collaborative at clickcollab.com. What are your 8th graders like at the beginning of the school year versus the end of the year?
I will say the beginning of the year, they're always just feeling themselves. They think they are the coolest thing to have ever graced all of our presence. And it's just, And it's really funny to watch because I think that as sixth graders, then going to seventh grade, they see the eighth graders being like these super mature adults in their building. And then they get there and they're trying to like fulfill that role. And then we see some behavior issues again, like social media drama. And then something like clicks after Christmas where all of a sudden they kind of just like slow down a little and then start kind of thinking through things a little bit more like analytically, where I think, going from sixth to seventh to eighth grade, it's just a beautiful thing because I work really hard with my kids to be able to like identify their emotions, how to work through them, and then seeing it unfold towards the end of eighth grade, where if they do have issues with each other, they'll go, just pull them in here. I'll just sit down and talk with them. Okay. I mean, that's great.
That's huge
Yeah,
for
like
a
you are
middle
more than
schooler.
welcome to do that. Right. Because normally they'll just go, oh, well, I'm just going to text down here and just text them. And then you can't read anything the right way. So everyone's in a fight. So I love watching them grow up. And at the end of eighth grade, I feel like they're just, while they tell me they're not ready, I think that they are ready to just not be with, the little sixth and seventh graders anymore.
Yeah. And then you're trying to give them that next boost of confidence that they need. Like, yes, you are ready. You've grown so much, even if you don't remember it. And
Mm-hmm.
you are ready for that next step of independence. And then they're still really secretly nervous in the back of their minds because they know they're about to be the little tiny fish next year.
Uh-huh. Yes. And then because we loop with them, I'll say like the last 2 weeks, it's like clockwork. This is the third time I will have rotated with my kids at my school. Like the last 2 weeks of school, I have so many kids in my office and they don't want to talk about anything. They just want to sit there. And I go, so what's going on? They're like, well, what high school are you going to go to? I said, I'm not going to high school with you. Like, I'm, I'm sorry.
Seniors do the same thing. They start like milling around, start hanging out in your office. I'm like, go to class. What are you doing here? But
Hmm.
I think you're right. I think it's just this like safe environment that you've cultivated in your office and with your personality that they still want to be connected to you and they don't want to say goodbye yet.
Yes, absolutely. And then they realize that I go back to sixth grade with a whole new group of kids and they go, well, you have new kids? And I go, yeah. They're like, well, you're not going to like them more than
Of
me.
course, of
And I
course.
said, surely I will not.
You will always be my favorite,
You will always be my favorite. Yeah.
said to every single student.
Yes.
Okay, tell us. I would love to hear this kind of from probably everyone in the series that I do with this. Do you have anything unique at your school or part of your school counseling program? Unique offerings or ways that you connect with students or programs that you put on? Like, I know every school and school counseling department kind of has its own personality and own creative ways of connecting with students. What have y'all kind of done?
As I was talking about before, with just creating that relationship with our feeder high schools, we also do the same thing with our elementary school counselors. So I feel like, again, because we all have a good relationship and can communicate well, if I weren't at school and then the fifth grade counselors were coming, I know that one of my co counselors would totally get the lowdown who can be in classes with who would do best here. And then they will be able to tell me. But like I was saying with looping, I feel like that's not something that you find everywhere. And it allows relationships with students to kind of develop like naturally instead of feeling forced and rushed to like know every single thing about every kid and what their first and last name is and all the things. Because a lot of kids in sixth grade that didn't talk to me, they'll talk to me in eighth grade. And that's because we really do a good job like pushing into classrooms and working on classroom lessons, and we're able to have that space, which is great. And the teachers at our school are really supportive of our program. It's been a lot of work. Like we've had to really work towards where we are right now with administrators understanding what we do and what our job is and where the line is between us and them.
But that's such a good point that it could take a kid a really long time to warm up. I mean,
Well,
just
yeah,
overcoming the transition of coming into school and then in middle school, you only have 3 years compared to the 4 years that we have in high
right.
school, that it could take a while. But if you're looping with them, you get to see that transformation and they have that one person that they trust.
Yes. And then, like I was saying, with the classroom lessons, I'm always in the classes, I'm always in the hallway. So for those kids that, like you said, take a little time to warm up, they see me constantly and then see other kids wanting to come talk with me. And then I always try to say, like, if you're coming to my office, it doesn't mean you're in trouble. I have kids in my office all day. They're always finding me. They always know where I am.
Right.
So it's not like you're not in trouble. It's not a weird thing to come and see me. And I think that for some of them, it does take to eighth grade where they go, oh, well, she is a cool person. Thank
You're
you.
like, what have I been saying the whole
I
time?
know. I told you I was cool. I told you in sixth grade I was really cool. Have you realizing it before you go to high school?
Right. What are your favorite classroom lessons to do? Do you have topics that you love doing?
Yeah. So again, this is the third group I've looped with. I've really narrowed it down with like sixth grade. I hit like handling emotions, social cues with those classroom lessons. And then seventh grade, I really like to start the high school prep stuff then instead of waiting until eighth grade. So, as I said before, we're a magnet school. So, all of our kids will go all over the district to each high school when they leave me. And we'll do a lot of like high school exploration where they look up their career centers, they look up their school they're supposed to go to. And then the high schools also have magnet programs. So if they want to apply to those, we just give them a whole class just to just sit and look up everything. So then that way they feel like they're making a good decision and know what the magnet process is. And I also do a GPA lesson in seventh grade that has been really fine tuned because I've taught it every single year since I've been at my school.
Well, and this is wild that you say all this because they come into high school and act like they've never heard it before.
Well, right. And the reason why I made this GPA lesson is because I talked to our feeder high school counselors and I was like, what do you need these kids to know when they get to you? And they said, like, what a GPA is. And I kind of laughed. I said, what do you mean they don't know what a GPA is? They're like, they have no idea.
You're like, what have I been doing the last 2 years?
Right, right. And I said, okay, well, like, give me bullet points of like things you want your ninth graders to know about grades and GPAs. And one of them said, like, your GPA doesn't restart every year you're in high school. And I said, they don't, again, I had no idea. That these kids had no idea. So I would like to say, because of this one specific lesson that I do, that at least like my kids know what's up when they get to high school.
Right, right.
we go over like high school graduation requirements, and I know it goes like boom over their head, but in eighth grade they have to have graduation meetings with a counselor and their parent. And so again, I want to also have them prepared for that. So if they do have a parent that's very much like they're going to be a doctor and they're going to the college I went to, I want them to at least feel like they can kind of stick up for themselves, where they know what they're talking about with
Yeah.
what classes they want to take. So
I love that because you know your student population and you know kind of what those meetings can turn into, that you get to equip
yes,
the student to be a leader in the meeting and to have a voice. Because it's the same when they get to high school too. They have the same arguments with their parents while they're sitting there, and you feel awkward as the counselor trying to have a counseling session between all three of them. But
yep,
when you know the student and you've equipped them, like, hey, we have already actually met and talked about this in your classroom and you understand this, like they can advocate for themselves too, which I think is a huge win.
yep. They also calculate their GPAs at that lesson. So I'm awful at math, but I can calculate GPA like really fast
I
now.
love
So
it.
I'll teach the kids how to do that. And then we talk about high school credit courses because a lot of ours in eighth grade are taking Algebra 1 and English 1. And I don't want them to go to eighth grade and then just not try really hard and they go, whatever, when it's going to be on your high school transcript going to college with you if that's what you want to
Hmm.
do. So it's go time when you get to eighth grade. So again, selfishly, I just want to feel like my group of kids are just really, really set when they get to high school because I just want to send them off and feel really good about it. But
Yeah. And that's all you can do.
exactly. Eighth grade, we go over more career stuff and then get them ready for their graduation plan meetings. And then we'll do like adulting lessons where how expensive life is. And that's always really great to see too.
They have a reality check right
Oh,
there.
yeah. Hmm.
But then that ties into the career stuff and it helps them set some goals and have a realistic expectation of what's out there and how much things cost. My 6-year-old
Yes.
just realized that like everything costs money when she asked me why we're not going on a trip like every week this summer. I was like, girl, you know, it costs money. She was like, what? It blew her mind. So like we're starting those conversations now too.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I told my son, I said, we were at the grocery store today and he goes, can I get this snack or whatever? I said, well, if we buy that, then it's less money to have on our vacation. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, it's not just like you said, it's not like you just go and everything's free. Like you have to pay for it.
She had no
So
idea.
no idea. No idea.
Tell me about your counseling relationship, your counselor's relationship in your department and you with your administrators. Do you have a team that functions really well together? You don't need to speak poorly about them. I'm not asking you to do that. Like, what do they do well? What do you wish they did differently? You kind of alluded to the fact that that has taken some work to get to a good place. Like, tell
Oh
us
yeah.
about that.
When I started at my school where I am right now, counselors were very much looked at as another administrator. And while I appreciated that they held us so highly and thinking that we could do all these things, which we can, we don't want to.
I didn't
So
sign up for that.
no, no. And, just with like starting any job, like your first year as a counselor, your 10th year as a counselor at a new school, like I really had to just sit back for the first school year and just,
Bite your tongue and watch it all happen.
oh yeah, watch the whole thing and just kind of get the vibe. And then my second year, I just remember kind of saying, well, do we have to be in the cafeteria every single day? Because I remember I needed to do a small group and I had no time. So I said, okay, well, I'll do it at lunch. And then my admin said, well, you have to be at lunch. I said, okay, I'll do my small group in the cafeteria. And none of the kids talked. And I felt so bad. But
You're
we
like, I
just,
need to prove a point though.
yes, I was proving a point. And then, like I said, because I was with all the kids all the time, I was trying to sit with a small group. And it was just like a cluster of children all being like, I want to color too. You have candy, da 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 da. So it was baby steps to kind of get where we're at now. Grade level counselors still work with the grade level admin. So like next year I'll work with the eighth grade level admin. And then we have obviously our grade level, but again, we've really established the line of like, this is my job up to here. And then this is what I'm going to call you. And then you're going to take it from there. So, and even with teachers as well, that's been a big battle too, with just saying like, if I come take a kid out of your room, it's because they're crying and they're not going to get a referral. So like, that's what happens if I come. But if you need them because they're a disruption and they need to have a referral, that's an administrator thing. Don't call me
Hmm.
because I'm not doing
And
it.
it's so different. And to me, I think our teachers at the school that I was at, the teachers never confused us for disciplinarians, but they might not know what a student would be doing when they would leave their classroom. So they would think either it wasn't valuable or whatever. I thought you were just going to say that when they were crying, it's like you're helping them so they can come back and focus. No,
Right.
your teachers thought they're going to get in trouble when they leave. So it's like if the
Oh, yeah.
teachers think that, then of course the kids think that. Like
Of
no one
course they
knows what you
do.
do.
Right. So it's again, it's great now, but we really had to put our foot down of yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm not going to do this. But when we say no, it's no, I can't because I have to do blah blah blah. The art of saying no, of just saying like I can't do this for you because I have to go meet with this kid because we have an individual counseling session, or just having a pocket of things that if it's something that is not your role because it's administrator, okay, well, what do I have to do that's counselory at the time where I can't do that?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you said that because I think that's encouraging for people to hear. Sometimes people step into roles or they've just been somewhere for so long that they feel like they can't change the culture of their school. And I don't know that you need to change the whole culture of your school. There's so many things that like shape that culture, but you can change the perception of the counselors and the counseling department if you really want to. I mean, it is so doable.
If you want to be seen differently, then there's things that you can do. And there's so many resources out there. I mean, ask a website. It's all great and wonderful, but I'll say just even with social media now and all the school counseling, like your podcast, and I know there's a middle school one, and just there's so many different resources that you can reach out to, even just to feel like you're not the only one that's struggling with this, or
Hmm.
people have ideas of like, oh, you're struggling with this, try this. I did this at my school. This is what we did. And it's just, it feels like more of a bigger support group where instead of you just being by yourself and you're just
Right.
sitting here struggling and hating your job.
And no one got into this to hate their job, which I always like tell students, parents, everything like we're all on the same team. They don't pay me enough to be here hating my job. Like I'm here because I love it and I love y'all. So like please believe me in that. And then same like with your team and your greater team at your school. Like you want to make an impact on students and you do that through your role. It's a very specialized role. You have to be able to do what you went to school to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll say the admin at our school, they do a really good job with communicating like, hey, I had this kid in my office. They got in trouble for da 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 da. I have to call home. Who should I call? Because again, they know that we loop with them, especially by the time they get to eighth grade. They know that we know the kids really well when they get there, or it's this kid has to get removed from a classroom. This is who it is. Like, what can you tell me about them? And I think that I feel very valued at my school. Like, I feel like they understand that we're not only doing our jobs, we're just doing them well enough where the kids are always with us. They're always with us, always wanting to talk to us, like word vomit all the time. And I think that the relationship we have with our administrators are great, especially since now that line between like, this is me and now it's you has been really well established.
I love that. And that, like you said, that goes so far in terms of like trust and just that working relationship for them to turn to you and ask for your expertise and your relational knowledge. Like, what do you know about this student? And they trust you enough to know that you're doing your job really well, that you have an answer for them. I
Right.
mean, you know your students well enough, because you would feel offended if you found out that like they didn't come and ask you and you're like, this student is in my office all the time. I know everything there is to know about them.
Right.
Just
I know
ask.
that they're getting in trouble because their parents just told them that they're going to get a divorce. That's why they're acting like this, but no one
Right.
asked me.
And you have enough of those that you go to administrate and you're like, hey, we need to talk about this. If something feels off, like come and ask me. And I
Yes,
mean, you build a relationship with the admin that you work with because of stuff like that, like where you both
absolutely.
can pass things off and high five and know that they're going to do their role and you're going to do yours. That's huge. Y'all can conquer the world when you have a good admin and a good counselor working together.
Absolutely.
Okay, we just talked about so many things and I loved all of it. Is there anything we didn't talk about in terms of eighth graders that you feel like high school counselors need to know that we did not touch on?
No, I feel like we talked about all the things. I really feel like we talked about all the things.
That's great. Well, I loved getting to talk with you. I love getting to hear your perspective, taking these students from, awkward to a little bit more confident, maybe a little too confident, and then they get to high school and we knock them back down again.
It's
I
okay.
just,
They need it.
I love hearing your perspective about it. For as big of a district that you and I both I worked in, you work in, like crazy that we had never crossed paths or anything before because our schools are just clear across town, but
Yep.
we're dealing with the same stuff. And I think eighth grade counselors who listen to this, ninth grade counselors, high school counselors who listen to this will find value in, even if their school has a completely different demographic, like they're going to relate to something that you said in here because you gave us a lot to think about.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope so. I hope it helps for sure.
Well, thanks for being on the pod, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
What a fun episode. I hope you found yourself nodding, giving an amen, clapping, saying, yes, girl, I see you. I hear you. That is me as a counselor listening to this episode. I just know that there is something in here that you will relate to, whether you're a middle school counselor who found this podcast or you're a high school counselor who has always been listening. If you're listening to this and you are a ninth grade counselor or you help with that transition in any way to ninth grade, you're going to want to grab my transition to ninth grade presentation, which I'll link in the show notes. There is a presentation, a planning guide, or a bundle of the two of them discounted together when you purchase them. So I'll link all that in the show notes along with where you can find Lauren, One Crafty Counselor. So go ahead and check her out on Etsy and all the places. She's super creative. She's a fun follow, whether it's for her crafty creations or her counseling content. Lauren gave us a lot to think about as a middle school counselor, sending her students up to the high school. And I know we have a lot to consider now that we have the insight of an eighth grade counselor. I'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening to today's episode of High School Counseling Conversations. All the links I talked about today can be found in the show notes and also at counselorclick.com/podcast. Be sure to hit follow wherever you listen to your podcast so that you never miss a new episode. Connect with me over on Instagram. Feel free to send me a DM at counselorclick. That's CLIQUE. I'll see you next week.